I want to take this time to say that I'm not a historian. I'm not an expert on Georg Ohm or anything else. I looked on the internet for a few hours, wrote some notes, and decided to make a video. I'm bound to get some things wrong, so take everything I say in this video with a grain of salt. Or rather, a heart-stopping pile of salt you should have next to you for the rest of the video. Also, if you're Mr. T, I want to thank you for giving me an extension on the project. If you're not Mr. T and you're wondering what I'm talking about, this video is actually a school project. That's right, I'm not one of those Google slide-making pansies. I spent 3 hours researching and then 10 hours editing a YouTube video. Also keep in mind that I edited this entire video in one weekend, so it's gonna be bad. This is your only warning. Georg Ohm was born in Erlangen, Germany, March 16th, 1789. For those of you saying, that was kind of a long time ago. It was. The American Revolutionary War of Independence ended just 6 years prior to his birth. He probably grew up with a George Washington poster on his bedroom wall. George grew up with his mother, his father, his brother Martin, and his sister. To be fair, he had more siblings, but since this was the 1700s, the life expectancy of a child was about as long as a carnival goldfish. His mother also didn't last very long, dying when George was only 10. When they were growing up, George and his brother learned science and mathematics from their father, Johann Wolfgang Ohm. Apart from having the hardest name in history, Johann was also a genius, teaching himself advanced mathematics, physics, chemistry, and philosophy, and then teaching it to his sons George and Martin, on top of having a full-time job as a locksmith. Johann Ohm was a giga-chad and a nerd at the same time. Two groups who were sworn enemies, yet there was one man who could walk between worlds. It was said that one day the chosen one would end the war between the based and the cringe, and the world would forevermore live in harmony. And yes, this is a 100% historically accurate picture of Johann Wolfpack Ohm. Don't worry, I checked for you. There's absolutely no need to verify this for yourself. You're safe. There's nobody inside your home. There's no need to find out who's clawing on your door at 3 a.m. Let them in. After making enough money, Joan sent George and his brother Martin to the University of Erlangen in 1805. And George loved school. Now you might be asking yourself, why would an angsty teen want to be at school? It's because he didn't try, that's why. Everything the professors were teaching were things that George and Martin had already learned from their father, Johann Ohm. They were so academically advanced that Carl Christian von Langsdorff Langsdorff, okay. They were so academically advanced that Carl Christian von Langsdorff, a professor at the school, compared them to the Bernoulli family, a famous family of Swiss mathematicians. Feeling that school wasn't worth his time, George instead filled his day by dancing, ice skating, and playing billiards all day. For any uncultured swines out there like myself, billiards just means pool. Johann Ohm never got to go to school and get an education. He had to teach himself everything he knew, which is why he was kinda pissed off when he found out that his son was blowing off his homework to become a ballerina. So after just 3 semesters, Johann kicked his son out of school. A year later, in 1806, George got accepted as a mathematics teacher in nweioapjqio.
Gottstadt bei Nidau.
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 Gottstadt bei Nidau, okay. I have a feeling I'm going to need this tab later, so I'm just going to leave this up. 6 years later, in 1806, George gets accepted as a mathematics teacher in Gottstadt bei Nidau, Switzerland. He spent the next 19 years jumping from school to school for various reasons. Sometimes the school was shut down, sometimes he just got really sick of teaching, only to go teach somewhere else. George was extremely unsatisfied with his job of teaching stinky, stupid, peasant children, and decided that he wanted to be a professor at an expensive university, so he could teach annoying, snobby rich kids instead. During those 19 years of jumping between schools, George had spent his free time studying the works of yet more famous mathematicians, like Lagrange, Landré, Laplace, Butte, Passion, and Frachenel. Unfortunately, they were all French. During his studies, he did some experiments with electricity following Ørsted's discovery of electromagnetism in 1820. All of his experiments made Ohm look like an absolute nerd, which essentially made him into a walking woman repellent. Worst wingman ever.
Of all time.
In 1825, he thought it might be a good idea to start working on becoming famous so he could get in that snobby rich kid university I was talking about earlier. So rather than pretend he was into basketball or something, he started writing a book on electricity. 2 years later, he completed it and called his masterpiece Die Gewaltigkeit. It means something in German. So what was the book about? Well, it was about Ohm's law. You can tell how desperate he is for that YouTube clout. First part of the book was all about mathematics that were required to understand Ohm's law. George still had that virginity on lockdown at this point. Unfortunately, this was a time in history where the standard approach to physics was in a non-mathematical way, thus discrediting his work in the eyes of most physicists. It also didn't help that he was very unconvincing in his explanation that the mathematical way was the correct way of looking at it. Despite his effort, Georg Ohm did not receive the popularity that he desired. In 1833, he was given the title of professor at Nuremberg. Unfortunately, it wasn't the university position that he'd strived for his whole life. It took a few years before people started to take Ohm's law seriously. 16 years later, he was finally recognized in 1849 and went to Munich as curator of Bavarian Academy's physical cabinet. 3 years later, in 1852, he finally achieved his lifelong dream of becoming chair of physics at University of Munich. Finally, he could afford to move out of the cardboard box he'd been living in for the past 46 years and moved into a cramped New York apartment. The American dream. Unfortunately, he would die just 2 years later in 1854, right after getting the snobby rich kid life. What a shame. So what's the lesson to take away from this? How did Georg Ohm's work affect us today? Well, if you're not Mr. T, it doesn't really matter, and you can just move on your life and forget you ever watched this video. But if you are Mr. T, then Ohm's law revolutionized the world of electricity. The new understanding of electrical resistance helped inventors understand what they were working with, and figure out how to bend it to their will. There are many modern-day appliances and electronics that use resistance to make them work. Stoves, light dimmers, electronic heaters, irons, chargers, fuses, and so much more. I just realized that I went this whole video without explaining what an ohm is, so here we go. An ohm is a measurement of electrical resistance. On the other side of the spectrum, there's volts, which are the exact opposite. Ohms resist amps, then think of amps as being the actual power that you get from Okay, here, I'm just going to use an analogy. So imagine that your amps, right, you're just like a kid at a water park. Think of yourself, you are the amps in this hypothetical scenario. So you're a kid at the water park, and you go to the tallest slide in the entire park. But you get to the top, and you realize you're afraid of heights. So you want to go back down, but your dad is standing next to you. And he's whispering in your ear, "Go on, go down the slide." But you're too scared, you don't want to go. So your mom tells you, if you don't want to go, you can just go back down the stairs. But your dad stops you, saying, "You climbed all the way up here, now you're just going to walk back down? What are you, some kind of sissy? Go down the slide." And your mom whispers in your ear, "It's alright, just go back down the stairs." But your dad says, "No, there are people on the stairs, and it would be rude to push past them." Your mom just tells you, "Oh, it's fine, just go down the stairs." But your dad says, "No, go down the slide." And then your mom starts pushing you away from the slide. Your dad starts pushing you towards the slide. "It's okay, you can just go away from the slide." "No, go down the slide." "It's okay, take your time." "No, go down the slide, just do it." And the crowd's waiting for you, you're getting impatient, and you're standing there wondering what you should do, and your dad is pushing you, your mom's pushing you, and eventually somebody wins, and your dad gets to sleep on the couch. I hope that analogy made sense, the whole water park thing where your mom was the ohms and your dad was the volts and you were the amps. You've probably seen this image circulate around the internet, and this is probably a better explanation than I could possibly give. But yeah, I hope that analogy made sense. It probably didn't, because I'm an idiot that spent way too much time making an elaborate analogy, but oh well. I bet your understanding of ohms right now is about my understanding of how the internet works. Whatever. Doesn't matter. You just have to accept that you're too stupid to understand it and go on with your life. You know what? No! I'm gonna take this into my own hands. I'm tired of being too lazy to do anything. I'm tired of procrastinating. I'm tired of waiting for my problems to solve themselves. I'm tired of all my friends calling me an idiot and then thinking I'm uncultured. I'm gonna take this into my own hands. I'm gonna research how the internet works all by myself.
Hey, Tristan, what's up?
Hey Seth, you're smart, right?
Yeah, why?
Could you explain how the internet works?
You want
For
me to
no
explain how the
particular
internet
reason
works?
at all.
Okay. Well, at its core, the internet is a global, decentralized network of interconnected computer systems that communicate using a standardized protocol transport layer, and it's actually called the internet integrity or transmission. It's kind of ironic. Finally, actually facilitates the exchange of application layers across the ensuring reliable source point user device initiates a DNS or domain name system query to translate the lowest level name layers to deal with the transmission of binary data values such as information and services on a global scale, allowing us to do things such as this Discord call. Did you get any of that?
It runs on magic.